the frame right now. How about that? There we go. Sorry about folks. So I got some sculpts. We're going to be working on some heads. We're going to be talking some ZBrush as usual. I have one concurrent viewer. Welcome. I gotta assume I hope that's not me accidentally watching it, but I know there's a bunch of people hanging out in voice chat A. So you're all in here. Check out my stream, throw on the background, do some stuff. It's pretty neat. I'm drinking out of my Seattle World's Fair glass that Valia Wensloff gave me because she's a champion. But yeah, if you're in here, drop in the chat, say hi, and I'm gonna go off today, do a little demo, show you some ways that I approach heads, and I'm gonna start from the very beginning. I know what I want to make, but I don't have any images yet, and that's gonna be a good way for me to kick things off. So I'll pop it on my Wacom tablet. I got this. I was sculpting this before. This is a character that I've been working on. I worked on her pose a lot. When we get more into full body characters, especially when we get into stuff for the last bit of the class where you will be doing a full character, I'll show you a little bit about how you do some posing, some poly painting, stuff like that. For now, we're just worrying about pretty static characters, so it's not as important. Really got to get her ponytail zhuzhed out, so I still got some work to do on it, but when don't you? Probably should call this one done and move on to my next project, which is going to be a sculpt of my favorite cartoon character. You might have read it from the social chat, Freakazoid. Mid-90s cartoon buffoonery at its best. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. I already got my changes saved, but I might not, so let's just be safe. I don't need a PR. So I'm going to start everything off. Reset everything. Okay. These little tools kind of reset a bunch of things in here, hide stuff out. Actually, you know, I think I'm going to do before I do anything in ZBrush, I'm going to close it because I want to show you a couple things when you open it up. And before I do all of that, I'm going to do a little bit of searching. So a couple things that I like to do. I have the Edge browser, which is a Chromium browser. I recommend it, privacy, security, whatnot. But I do have something called the ArtStation plugin, which is a great way of stumbling across cool concepts and things. Every time I create a new tab, instead of taking me to a website, it takes me to a random piece of art on ArtStation, which is this incredible website. So if you see a concept you like, you can always click on it and see the person's profile, see other work they've done. And I've actually stumbled across a lot of really cool pieces and saved them later that I might want to use. If you're not on ArtStation, it is absolutely like the coolest place where the best artwork, especially for digital artists, are. And I check it every day just to see what's out there, find work that inspires me, maybe concepts I'll do later, or get a better look at other people's techniques. There's really cool stuff on here. So if you don't have an ArtStation account, get one and be posting in there. It's amazing. But I already know what I want to work on, which is Freakazoid. Turns out it's not streaming anymore, by the way. Sorry. So the nice thing about doing a good traditional 2D cartoon character, and the reason I want you to do a 2D cartoon character, is helps you cement how do we approach our sculpting for our heads? How do we like figure out how to convert something from a two-dimensional form to a three-dimensional form? So we see a couple images that are like more promotional images, which aren't bad. They give you the expression. I think this is sort of the iconic pose that I think of the character in, something like this sort of really goofy grin. So I think this is a good image. So I'm going to just start saving some images. You can also notice I have the Pinterest pin board. I use that a lot for things. But for now, I'm just going to save things. I'm going to throw it on my desktop, which is categorized by just projects I'm currently working on. So I'll make a new one. And this is where I'll store all my stuff. And I just start going through and looking for images that I think are helpful. And I can speed up this process a little bit. Beep. By doing something a little like this. Just dragging it in as I find images that I think fit the bill. This is a good one. there's like a conflict checker thing, but I like this one is someone else's drawing, which is kind of dangerous because sometimes if you look at someone else's drawing, you can end up running the risk of getting their version of something. And I'm trying to get more the original or authentic version of it. So this is a pretty good sheet, but something you should check out is what's called a model sheet. And sometimes characters have them. They don't always have them, but sometimes you get lucky. So here are a character or model sheet. I'll change character sheet. And these often are done up for characters like so. This person drew them themselves. Sometimes you can find the official ones, but sometimes you can find someone who's done that work for you. Like if you look at Bruce Timm does a lot of these. That's why I was hoping this would have it. And you'll find drawings of your characters from multiple angles. So Bruce Timm does a lot of these. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like, even though he worked on the concept for Freakazoid, it doesn't look like there's the official. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So it just kind of gives you a couple different angles. What you're looking for is multiple views of the same character as much as possible. And if you can get, like I said, a full turnaround, that's going to be great. I'm not going to do the full turnaround. I'm going to limit myself to just doing the bust for this so that you can see, too, how I approach that. So, I don't know, I think these are all pretty good. I like this. I'm definitely sticking with this image. So I think this is a nice straight on that kind of gives me the sense of, like, proportionately the shape of his head, what that's supposed to look like. I wish it would not do that. It just doesn't like these are called download. How about you? What do you think? External content. That's the one? Weird. Alright. Well. This is more of a side view. That's going to be pretty helpful. Wish there was an auto renamer for this kind of thing. That'd be nice. Other than that, stuff like character concept art is not always super helpful, and something like this is good to know what the character is capable of doing, but it's pushed it a little too far for me to really use it. Okay. I like to start when I have a good collection of images and views. I don't feel like I have some good ones, but I don't quite have enough. I think I could use a couple more. Like, I think a nice side view would be nice. Sometimes if you just search side, like you get, this is definitely someone else's art, so I don't want to use this, because that's definitely not the style of the cartoon I'm looking for. This is a good one, though. Like, so we get kind of a sense of, like, a side view of this character. The dynamics of his hair, things like that. And this one's kind of got a good close-up view. It's pretty large, gives you some details on how they imagine the nose is going to go. All right, I think I got a pretty decent start for what I need to do. So I'm going to take this collection of images and use this to start working on my character. Now, the more you work on your stuff, the more you'll know how many references you need or have. I've definitely done enough sculpts like this that I can probably get away with not having as many references as some of you might. That's okay. It's just you're going to get used to it. You're starting out. So now let's go ahead and I'm going to open up ZBrush. And in here, I want to start blocking in the main shapes of my character. And this is going to be a good concept because I'll get to show you how I'm going to add a little bit more realism to the character while still staying true to it, because I want the sense of some proportionality, some scale to things. So I can start just with a blank slate, or I can start with any of these Dynamesh spheres, which are sometimes nice because you can jump right in. But I'm going to start, I'll start that way. I think it's pretty good to work with. Start with a 32 or 64. 32 should be pretty good, as I like to start nice and low. This is going to be the basis for my head. Now, I like to use a lot of different tools to manage my images when I've saved them. PureRef is one of my favorite tools to use. And definitely when we get deeper into more complicated characters, I want you to use it. But for now, I want to show you a trick we can use for textures. So I can go to Texture. Over here, I can come to Import. And this is going to let me bring in some images, including the ones in here. So I'm just going to select all of them. I'm going to open them all. And now under the Texture window, I have all of my different character images. I don't have all. Oh. Which one was that? One was like my basis. Possible it doesn't like the image format. One of the images I had in here. The one that was actually supposed to be my main image. This one. JFIF. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and I'm going to do a save copy. And I'm going to save this as a JFIF. Can I change that? No? All right. Let's do it again. Because I'm going to see, I had that that image, but it came in as a format the program didn't like. So if I go here, I go to View File. That's a small image. I wonder if there's a better one of this particular. No, not really. I like this particular image. So now this is going to be a JPEG to save image as. Desktop. Okay. All of that just to get one image. So now I can import new image. Go, open it up. Bring them in and add to Spotlight. So I can scale this down and just pop it over to the side because this will be my reference. I'm going to kind of do like a little upper body thing with the character. So one thing you always have to do is go into Brush and go to Samples and turn off Spotlight Projection. Otherwise it assumes that you want to do Spotlight, which I don't. So I've got my basic shapes of my character. And in fact, before I get too deep into the sculpting, this is a really important step, is to break down the shapes of what you're working with. So let's go back in and open up my desktop, my folder here, and start looking at the character's head and the shapes of the head. So he's kind of got two major shapes to his whole jaw and head. Bring up my little pen. There we go. The major shapes, of course, are, I've got like this shape here, and then like a cranium shape here. And then there's like a trapezoid that comes from there. On the nose itself, his nose definitely has like more of a triangular shape, but there's still some structure to it because I should be able to see it from this angle. So the slope of his nose looks pretty straightforward. So geometrically from a front, I expect his nose to have a shape a little bit like this, because there is also some room for nostrils in there. Ears are definitely very circular. Looks like they connect straight in from the head. Like, Bruce Timm's really a master in his designs of tangential lines. You'll notice that the shape is simple and then complex. He does a really good job of that with his character designs and tries to push that as much as possible. Our job is to try to translate that into something that will work in a 3D view, which is a lot harder. The neck definitely kind of hits this, I think, connection in this shape and then slopes out. And then the jaw has like that very pointy heart-shaped kind of thing. And the question is going to be about how do I get some of these shapes? All of these lines that you're seeing on a cartoon like this every black line is there to insinuate something. So if I see this little black line running right here, it means I know he's got cheeks that are going to give me form. If I get something like this little slope or this little shape, I know that there's a lip, an upper lip here that runs that way. If I get this, I know I need to have something in terms of a lower lip to help me get that little bite in there. And it's not always super visible, it's not always super obvious, but I need this to get it to like make the shapes that I want. And then the hair's completely kind of separate. I'm going to build that in basically as a sphere that'll then stretch out and try to get into the shape that I want and hit it from as many angles as possible. This little lightning bolt pattern, it's visible from a bunch of angles, but we can see from this side, it's only one of them's visible. So it's supposed to kind of look like shiny hair, you could think, but it's definitely like a separate thing. So I'll sculpt this as a separate piece that'll sit on top of everything. And then he's got his domino mask, which is going to be a separate piece of geometry I stick on the top of everything, and it will cover up his eyes. His eyes are very movable, they're very flexible, they're very cartoony. They go from a flat circular shape to really scrunched down to really stretched out, as we can see here. Scrunched down, stretched out. So it's kind of almost like the eyeballs themselves are changing shape, but I think we can probably pull most of that off if we keep the eyeballs the same shape, and then we just decide how the lids kind of cut off using like the mask to do that. So that's what I'm going to try to do with it. Of course, I can always change those things as I need. Get that out of my way. As I'm working, any questions people have, throw out there, pop in, just, let me know anytime if there's something you're confused about or you want to know more about. So I got my base shape. I want to keep it separate pieces as long as I possibly can. One of the things that I like to do is turn on polyframe, but I turn off line. And I like this because it produces like a nice, as I make more objects and add more subtools. So if I duplicate the subtool a couple times, we can see that the new subtools are going to be like, are probably going to be, I guess this is all the same color. If I combine them together, it'd be different colors. But this is going to just let me see this as a blocked out object. So this is going to be the basis for my jaw. And I want to make sure I'm in X symmetry with this. And I'm on move. I'm going to start by trying to sculpt out his shape. So I know I kind of want like a jaw. I definitely want it to be able to transition. And I want it to be really coming to a point. Often it's helpful to me too is to think about using something like a trim dynamic to sort of brush into my simple primitive shapes. I really want that sense of a strong jaw coming out with the character, because it's like the jaw really defines a lot of the shape of it. And then I need that kind of like bean shape, like it's coming out, like so. And in fact, I think this whole thing can stand to be bigger and a little longer. So kind of combining a couple of the tools here, giving them some space in between them. So this is going to be kind of my skull that the head comes out of. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use flip curve, which is going to let me flatten or straighten things out. So this is going to be like the basis of the skull. And smooth that out. I'm going to append a cylinder. This is the basis now for my character's neck. Stretch out a little bit. And polyframe. I want to taper it out. I can taper it a couple ways, but I'm actually going to use this tool. So if I click on this little gear with this in here, it's going to give me tapering. And that just lets me pull on one of these little handles. And I can control, just give me a simple slope for the character's head. Take this sphere that's here, and this is going to be the basis of my torso or my chest. So kind of sculpting it out as a base, simple shape. And I'm just doing the upper body mostly here. Nothing has to be that complicated with it. inflate a little bit on the chin. Soften out some of the features. I need more of a curve here. Got too much jaw. I want to kind of soften this up. Dynamesh it. Select my subtool here. I'm having trouble switching to it. There we go. And shape that as kind of lumpy freakoid head. Now I'm going to start drawing one of the features that helps you really cement things that I like to get in as quickly as possible is to start with the eyes. The eyes are going to really help me define a lot about the character. And so I always append a new sphere 3D because it's going to stick it right in the center. Let's solo it really quick. And it's going to have these poles, which are really important. I'm going to rotate this forward so that if I'm looking at the character, it's kind of like shooting straight out at me. Turn perspective off really quick. And let's solo it out. And this is going to be what I'm going to base my eyeball out of. So I'm going to do this by taking that shape. And I'm just going to squish this in by scaling it backwards. Boom. See. I wonder. It just flattens it. What I really want to like blade. Yeah, that'll work. Take it, just kind of soften this out. It just creates a little hole for me that's going to help me see the eyeball. Switch it back to the gizmo. Get it relatively where I want it in the head. If we see, like, if I imagine his head is here, again, a reason for me to leave my pen tool off the side most of the time when I'm working is I kind of imagine the top of his head is like here, bottom of his head is here, so I think about like whereabouts do the eyes go. And if we imagine it's something like this, well, the eyes are still pretty close to the center, maybe a little higher than usual, but surprisingly still pretty much on, even though the jaw feels like so exaggerated. Is this distance there? Really, I mean, I guess his head could be a little bit more like this on the inside. If I'm kind of paying attention to what I think the brain in here is doing, then I'm looking at something more like a 60-40 kind of a thing. So this is the kind of like stuff I do a lot when I'm working here. I'm gonna turn on not ghost, so that's the solo kind of ghosting mode. Geometry, modify topology, and turn on mirror and weld. So I can get a sense of eyes. I'm going to turn on local symmetry. Also got to turn on X, I suppose. You can get the sense of like I want the eyes and the head to be the right size. Okay, let's turn off that ghosting and transparent mode. And now I'm going to combine the top of the head and the bottom of the head together into one subtool. So this one and this one. So I think I'm ready to combine these two. I'm going to go to merge, merge down. And now I dynamesh them to combine them together, because it's until I dynamesh them, they're not really one object. And then I'm going to inflate back to find my eyes in here. Okay. I'm going to get this big, big smile with him. That's going to be a big feature that really helps define a lot of the shape too. His jaw is like really exaggerated, like a really big, exaggerated grin. So I can smooth back to get the shapes that I'm looking for. And let's say, let's combine this too with the neck. This is the torso. I'm going to keep those separate. I have no need to combine those together. So put those right next to each other. Merge down. Okay. Same thing. The reason I'm combining with the neck is it's going to give me room to do the mouth. I want you to do an open mouth as much as possible because it's really going to help. And I'm keeping this resolution on this character pretty low right now. Because, I mean, I don't really need it any higher, too. Carve this back. This is going to be about where my ears transition from. So what I'll do is I'm going to use a little bit. I'm not quite ready to do the mouth yet. I don't have enough geometry. But I'm going to start putting in some of the features for the ears and the nose. I'm going to use my Insert Primitives tool and make sure I'm on Insert Sphere. And actually, let's use Polyspheres because these are great. I'm going to put this in, and then I'm going to draw this right here. With this drawn out, flatten it using a little high polish. Scale it back. And then use this tool to sort of rotate it back a little bit. The ears should have a little rotation. I used to love drawing cartoons as a kid, and I find that Zbrush is like playing with like clay in this. It like really reminds me of that. So I'm leaving everything separate for now. As you can see with my polyframe, I can see how they're all separated. The tutorials that I have you using in your guide, I really like those because it gives you a lot of flexibility. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to split to part. Actually, I'll do group split because these are the same group. So now I got this guy by itself, and I can use it to sculpt into a nose. And this lets me play with the shapes well before I'm ready to really do a lot of the forming. Let's go back to this. I wonder what that is. Oh, I split up the head and the neck and all that by groups too. Well, that's all right. I can always combine those back together. Not a big deal. Merge down. If you use something like Merge Visible, it's fine. Just keep in mind, Merge Visible actually puts it into a separate tool. So let's put these all in group. Great. So in order to do the mouth, I need a lot more geometry to work with than I have right now. And so let's go ahead, and I'm going to do it in my Dynamesh. I'm going to up its rating. Let's go up to 64 at the very least. Let's see if this gives me enough. So sometimes you see the Dynamesh didn't do anything until I made a change to the actual mesh, how it works. If you're ever trying to use Dynamesh and you're like, it's still not doing anything, you just need more surface. So the nose should come up pretty high. If the object is hidden right now. I'm going to kind of give him a real button nose for now. Make it a lot smaller. Inflate it a little bit there. Because I want it to be almost like really lined up with the ears. The eyes are about halfway up. The ears here too. And then I'm going to just draw out a smile for him. Here's how I'm doing it. I'm going to be using, instead of sculpting it or carving it by hand, which I could do to help me get like an idea of where the shape is, I'm going to be using a slightly different technique. So I'm going to go ahead and mask it instead. I'll actually need surface on, and I can hold Control and Alt to undo stuff. You can see to like carve things back because I'm trying to get the sense of his gigantic, terrifying grin. It seems like it lines up almost with the side of his eyeball here, and it's got this real like curve, has like a pretty strong apex towards the bottom. Again, you can always edit or change these things. Comes to a real point with it, and it slopes down a little bit more. I'm just kind of brushing across until I'm defining the size and shape of it. Now I'm inverting, and I have a couple options. I could just carve it out from here, but what I'm actually going to do is go down to my deformation, and let's do an inflate. So I can push it out, or I can use inflate balloon, which you see is like gonna crash my system. So this is great. Actually, my ZBrush has been crashing a bunch today, and I'm not exactly sure why. But this is going to be great because I'll show you how to recover from a crash, which is going to happen. Fortunately, ZBrush is actually pretty good at this. I'm going to close the program. The big problem is I'll have to pull my image back in. And let's reopen ZBrush. So, RIP. Always save early and often. I didn't save that project at all, which could be a real disaster. So what it's going to tell me is that my recent version was terminated, my recent session. So I can go to my quick save tab. It's going to open up for us. We see a bunch of stuff I've been working on today, including the last one, which is recovered tool. So if I click this, it seems like nothing happens. Let me close the light box. What it actually is you see it's up in my tools, so I can just draw it out, hit T, and now I'm back into my object. So let's go ahead and take this opportunity to save it. And since I made a folder for my Freakazoid, which isn't named right now, I'm going to call this Freakazoid _01 underscore blocking. So this lets me know it's the first version, so it's going to be Freakazoid. It's going to be in order of when I worked on it, and it's going to let me know what stage I was at. This is a naming convention I like to work on for lots of projects. Let's try this again and see if I go where I kind of went wrong here. So if I do an inflate balloon, it seems like it's going to be fine. I can do it in a negative direction. It's going to kind of push things soft backwards. And in fact, what I want to do now is go to my display properties and do a flip, which is going to show me the inside of my character. And everything else is masked out, so I'm only getting the inside of the mouth, which is, of course, horrifying. I'm going to Dynamesh it really quick. I might have pulled it too close to the mouth. You got to be careful with that. I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to use inflate to kind of shape it out. What I'm doing is building what's called a mouth bag. And it's a shape that I can use to help me define like the mouth. So go ahead, sketch that out. Let's move things back here. And that gives me plenty of room for his giant smile. Lets me put teeth and stuff like that in, because that's a really essential part of his character. Let's go to my textures, and I gotta re-import my images, unfortunately. Same guy, textures, take my image, load it in, let's scale it, move it, and then I have to turn samples off every time, which is a little annoying. I wish they would just realize that I only ever use Spotlight for this. For using as reference images. He turns it back off, but beggars and choosers and all. So now I have my basics of my shape. I need plenty of room for this, so I'm going to set the nose up like a little higher, because I got a little shape that I'm going to need. And let's use my being standard. Kind of sculpt it backwards. And then I'll use inflate backwards to kind of give me like a little bit running along here. I definitely need some cheeks in order to get the shapes. So I'm also going to do inflate. And that's going to give me cheeks with it. I think you'll find when you start in ZBrush, there's a lot of cursed images out there. That's okay. That's what we deal in around here. So now I'm going to build in, obviously the feature I don't have that I'm going to really need is some teeth. And the teeth are also similar to the eyes, are going to really help me define a lot of the shapes in here. The teeth are going to help me define a lot of the shape that's involved with the mouth. Get this curve. I know I want to get like this little line. In order to do that, I got to get the idea of that's kind of what it's simulating, is the lip curling into itself like that. And so I need a little cheek to help me do it. Let's play the lip. kind of help me build up this side, and it's going to help me get that peanut shape that I'm looking for. Okay, he's very deranged looking, but that's, again, on model, as we say. So let's go into and add a new subtool, and I'm just going to append in a cylinder. And I only need half of it. So I'm going to use my clipping tools, clip curve, and I'm just going to clip the back half. So I got it just like that. All the geometry is still there, it's just shoved forward. And then I bring it down, and I bring it in. So if you think about the anatomy of like teeth, that's like the shape is a little bit more brought in. Actually, drag some of this out a little. So I can mask it, unmask it, and drag it back a little bit like so. And then let's subdivide it a couple times just to give it the shape we want. We're going to work with this a little bit more, but this is just a start for us. Turn off solo, and now I'm going to move these teeth into place. So the top row of teeth stays with our head, and it generally doesn't rotate. The bottom row of teeth is attached to our jaw. Go ahead and duplicate this, move it down. And so if I think about it, they're both about halfway through. I need right about that halfway point. So I'm going to undo a lot of this to go down to the lower subdivision level. And just soften to kind of carve this back a little bit. Give him kind of that real cartoony underbite kind of look. Try to smooth out my front a little. In fact, a thing you can do with this is instead of using subds, I'm going to show you what the preview mode does. I'm going to delete higher. And if I press D, it's going to ask, do I want dynamic subdiv? And this is like a preview for subdivision, but it's still in the lower level. So it sometimes is nice for working with stuff like this. Let's go, again, go to lowest, hit, nope, not freeze. Go to lowest one, delete higher, and then I can hit D. And this is still in a lower level, but it's simulating a higher. He's looking very deranged, but again, as we say, pretty on character. So I kind of like this idea that the teeth have almost like a curve to them. And then get to my character, and I'm going to add a little bit more of a lower lip down here, just by building it up with my clay buildup. I'm just working across, and that's helping me build up as I dynamesh. Gives me a little bit more structure to work with. Great / horrifying. All right, next bit, I'm going to work on my nose. Dynamesh that down a little bit, and let's think about its overall shape. Kind of has that real triangularness, but I want to make sure I'm overall shaping it like a real human nose, where there's going to be a flat front and some angled sides. I'm not going to worry about the nostrils for this right now. That's going to come in time. The rest of the shape of everything in the face feels pretty decent for this character. Let's get the ears though. And again, these are pretty low resolution right now. Go to Dynamesh, I'm gonna up it to 64. and think about the shapes I want. Here, I kind of want it to curl over. In here, has that like kind of curls up and he's got an inset. Something like that. And usually just like a little extra shape to get the idea of the ear. I think I'm just about able. Not quite ready to add it yet, but I'm almost getting there with it. It's like I said, it's much easier to move and adjust this now. Let's get a base this ear. Cutting more detail than is absolutely necessary with this character. I said it is so simple, but I like adding this kind of feature. For me, I know if I was ever going to rig this, I like to have enough to work with. All right, and this neck, not quite right. Thin things out a little bit here. Try to get that slope in. Might need to beef out the back here a little bit. In fact, if I really want to get inspired, I can work on him in his characteristic blue color. Why not? So before I do some of the other stuff, I want to take a look at him, make sure some of my side views and everything. Definitely like get a nice slope kind of going there. His nose has kind of a good point to it there. Okay. Definitely different expressions. His face changes a lot per expression. So there's a lot of guessing we're going to do, but it looks like I've really got a lot of that defined pretty well, which is nice to see. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the nose into the rest of this and the ears. I'll show you the next step. So I've got all these here. I'm keeping eyes, the teeth, and the chest parts all separated for now. Because again, they're separate objects, so why would I put them together? I'm going to append it, not append. I'm going to merge down. Okay, and merge down. Okay, and now I can dynamesh it all together, smooth some things out, and before I'm ready to go to the next stage, start working up. I'm at 128. Let's go to that. Helping me kind of define where I want things to be. I want that idea that the ear geometry kind of comes up and over into the head, like so. Good. I can use my Damien standard to help me create like a nice line, dynamesh it, and then smooth it back out. Carve it in on the inside like so. Looks like that goes all the way into here. And then, you know, maybe I have the idea of a little bit of an inner ear. Still keeping things very cartoony. And then getting this to like smoothly transition into the rest of the head. Now I did lose some of my definition because I really want this ear to like pop out from everything else here. Something you got to look out for is that threaded, like the top of the ear really losing its definition. So sometimes what helps is I'm going to use my mask pen. I'm going to mask out these areas around the ear like so. And now if I use inflate here, I can bring stuff up without hitting that top. Move it back a little bit because I don't want it bridging. And then that helps me define that a little bit better. Kind of like lifting things up. Trying to keep the shapes pretty simple. But he's getting pretty freakazoidy. So right now, my question is, how precise can I get stuff? Because I want to make my next stage, which is my Z-remesher stage. Easiest way of doing this is to build it out. Let's spell things really quick. Out of some solid geometry. That's some good stuff. So here's how I like to do it. Center of the eye, something like this. W, and that's polygrouping it. So let's turn on polygroups. And in fact, I think I don't have enough resolution. I'm gonna hit Control W on this, which resets all the polygroups. I'm gonna set this up to something a lot higher. Let's say like 400 on this model in particular works. So this is gonna up its resolution quite a bit. As soon as I do this, I'm gonna save this as a new project. And this is gonna be Freakazoid 02, and this is gonna be my Dynamesh version. So this means stuff is combined together. If I ever want to go back to blocking, I can always go back to my blocking or even import that. There's a lot of little stuff you notice that's hard to fix here, like the exact stuff is like I have to like really nudge it to get it exactly smoothed out. But that's where the Z-remesher step is really good. We're going to create a lower resolution version that we can subdivide and then get a lot more control over it. And that's the reason I up the resolution so that I can make much, much more precise selections of things. Get around the eyes here now, like so. Turn off solo. W, hide that. So I'm holding Control and Shift to just to hide things. You can use any of the control shifts. Now I want to go around the eyes. If you recognize this, this is based on the way John James shows how to do it. I like this technique a lot for cartoonier characters because it gives you not necessarily an animation-ready Z-remeshed version, but something that's pretty close and solves a lot of the problems you usually have with Z-remesher by using these groups as a guide. Control, and I hide it. Now I'm thinking about the mouth. So I like to figure out where the kind of curvature, like the apex of that is. Because I need something more or less like a hole on the inside of it. W, hide that. And then I run along the lip. Because I want loops that are going to run along with the loop they're doing. So trying to keep it like one single line as much as possible. Thinking about how the shape kind of curls on itself. To get that shape that I'm looking at. Like I want it to be a single line. Possible. Get really in here, and I'm going to just erase away the inside. I want it to know that I want it to kind of go up and around, is what I'm hoping it does. Might not really work great, though. So I'll just try to give it as much help as possible. So I really want... Yeah, that's probably going to work better. I want it to follow, and I'll fix some of the positioning of things. And I can take this and hide it. I have an inside and an outside, but I can get all of this by going down to polygroups, auto group, and that's going to group this inside. So perfect. And then let's get the area under the lip, around the mouth. This one. Just trying to make sure that these are going to be, everywhere there's a border, there's going to be a loop. And that's going to help me control a lot of this. Then I want, let's do something that runs over the nose. Maybe straight down a bit. And get all this guy. And then let's go around. So just to make a loop that goes around the face like that. hide it. Auto groups again. And this one is going to run around the ear. And then I want it inside here. One more. Change up from mask pen to I move lasso, and I want to get the line that's the loop kind of like under the neck. And then lastly, just a little bottom piece down here. So I'm going to get rid of, I have two, let's do this guy again, mask pen. Because I got to get the inside. To get these loops to work really well, let's hide and hide these. Because it'll help us if these are empty when we make the loops. And I'm going to go to my deformation. Let's go up here to my turn off Dynamesh because I don't need that right now. I go to modify topology and delete hidden. And my last step is I'm going to do polish by features. Because that's going to give this a nice head of everything. So round those out. Okay. Now I'm going to turn on my wireframe again. I'm going to duplicate this head because I want to have a high and a low poly version. Now this head that I have right here, I'm going to Z-remesher. You guys have seen me do this a couple of times. And I'm going to play around the settings, maybe set it to about 1 and see what that looks like. So this is, I'll show you the reason I do it this way. Because it's definitely not going to do exactly what I want. Also, I probably should save this once before I do this as my Dynamesh version. So this is like the end of the step before I do a new one. I'll show you like a good way of thinking about your versioning your saves. Okay. That's actually not too bad, but we can make it better. I'm going to undo this. I'm going to save it really quick. This is going to be Dynamesh 2. I'm going to say yes to save it. And I'm going to save it again. Now I'm making this my new version. So version 3, and this is my Z-remesh step. So anytime I ever need to come back, I already know where I am. So this time I'm going to turn on in Z-remesher, keep groups. And what it's going to do now is when I Z-remesher it, it's going to try to follow the curvature of the groups that I've made, which is going to help define the loops that I'm going to want that are going to help. So it's like I'm trying to control where the mouth is, I'm trying to control what the eyes are, so that as I subdivide, it doesn't push or pull it in weird ways. But I get a low enough resolution model that I can really play with it. This is how I get really smooth characters. When you're playing with Dynamesh, things get lumpy, but it's great to just like play with the shapes, and I don't worry too much about the surface quality. This is going to have to be higher because it's collapsing some of the stuff up in here. So let's set my poly count maybe up to around 2. So this is going to let me have something that's easy to add detail to, control my creases, but also get a really smooth result. So I've been doing this with cartoon sculpts for a couple of years now. I used to really stay in Dynamesh a lot longer. There's always a question of how long do you stay in Dynamesh? It depends on your comfort level. I say for all of you, you're probably going to stay in Dynamesh longer than I do because you're going to need more time to figure out where all the features are. This isn't bad. I'd still really like this loop to go all the way around if possible. So I might go up just a little bit higher. Not so much so that it defeats the purpose of doing a Z-remesher. I just need enough space to do that because I want this to be like a couple, at least 1 or 2 loops that run around the eyes. A little trial and error. It's a good time to get a drink of water. And as soon as this is good, okay, see, this is what I'm looking for. I got a loop running around the eye. I got this loop that runs all the way around the chin. And yeah, it's really nice, actually. This turned out better than I was hoping. So we can see the consistency of it running around. Some of these corners aren't going to do me the best. Like, I'd really rather this turn all the way around, but we're going to live with it. So now, I have this guy. And I can take it, and it's only 6,000 versus the 1,000,000 that the other guy is. And I can Control D a couple times to smooth things out. And we can see it's now going to give me a really, really smooth result, which is great. And I don't even really need to do a lot of changing to it because my zero mesher is in a pretty good spot. So I can lower it down a little bit. And now we can see if I want to change this curvature here. If I'm up in this version, it's again a lot of nudging. But if I'm down in this version, much easier to change a slope or a shape or a tangent here because I have a lot less geometry to work with. You get a lot more control. So now that I've got this, to me, the real sculpting kind of starts. And I got plenty of time here, so I'm going to show you. So now you can see the geometry. Now the lines of it are actually working in my favor. So I'm not fighting the curvature of the model. The model wants to go in the direction that I want some of these features to go. It's just going to make my life so much easier. I do have holes in all of this, so I'm actually going to go back down because I can't fix this, but I'll show you that little trick that James uses. So BZM is the Z modeler. Got a lot of features, but what I want is hover over an edge. I'm going to do close holes, convex hole, probably good fruit flat. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But it's just going to let me stick a triangular kind of shaped hole in it. We use this one because it's going to be a nice triangle for us. And then that's good. So now I can, again, subdivide a couple times, unsolo things, and I can come back to my Dynamesh head, which I don't really need anymore. Let's make some hair. Hair is fun to do, and I actually can use a lot of tools for hair. I definitely use a Dynamesh to start things out with, though. You can see I don't use a lot of Sculptors Pro. I'm getting to that point where I'm old and I don't use all the newest tools for everything. So I kind of take the hair, I scale it up like this, and I just want to make it like a basis. Like we can already see because of the shape of the head, the hair almost starts to hit the right kind of features already without having to do very much. Then I take it, and this is one of the things I break from symmetry the quickest, but I'm going to start there. So Dynamesh, let's set it to 32. I think works pretty well for this project as a resolution. And then let's go ahead and move it. I kind of want to get this curvature of it moving up and over. And I'll show you guys a really cool technique I discovered. And I should say discovered, but Carson Jones was working on it. And I was like, oh, that's a great way of working inside this program. What I'm going to do is just kind of pull his hair straight out, you know, because he's kind of got this swooping curve to it. And I'm going to start by getting it like the shape too big that I kind of overall want with it. And getting it into a point like so. You know, I want to get it like that big chunky hair, and then Dynamesh it and hit W to open up my tool. Under my move tool now, I can hit this little gear and come into my bend arc. Ooh, not bend arc. Which one was it? Bend curve. Actually, these points are going to work quite right because I need it to be pretty straight on. Let's take it and, yeah, I'll rotate it straight. You'll see why I need it to be pretty straight on to work. Or I wonder if it'll work if the tool points this way. So I'm going to hold Alt, move this, because I want to see if this will work. Ooh, it does. So I kind of did this and it changed the angle of its orientation. Right now, it's trying to bend this side and this side. I want to change the axis from X to Y. And this is going to give me this little point that I can move around. And then all I have to do is change my curve resolution. And now I've got this, which is going to let me just kind of like play with the curve shape, which is pretty cool. And I can even do like twists and you know, inflate and deflate sections. So it's just like a cool way, especially if you have to move something, is you kind of build it flat or straight, and then we can come back and curve it later. I'm gonna make it pulled back now, and kind of doing a check, like looking at him from his angle. It definitely prefers one side, but I'm gonna keep it pretty smooth. And I can see remesher some things. And now I can pull off individual strands using my snake hook. The snake hook is great because I can kind of just pull something off, and I can take an area and just kind of like throw it off, shrink it down to like pinch it. There's other tools you can use to do something similar, like to get the result like a little closer to the surface. I'm gonna keep it a little tight to the head for now, though. It's kind of got like kind of curved straight out, so I want to make sure I get the base shape really good on this. You can see I'm no longer in symmetry. I've broken from it because it's helping me define my character a little bit better. And now I can use stuff like to cut things away. I often use Damien Standard. I can use it in both directions, like cutting away like this and then pulling out, especially on hair to create like parts and things. So move, and it's inside the head, but as long as I don't see it through the head, that's fine. So just trying to look at my reference and push and pull this around until it has the shape that his hair should have. And especially something like hair that's not exactly right on the left and right side, well, good, because it should look a little bit more natural if you do it that way anyway. I know it's a little nabbing to hear me say it all the time, that it's like, hey, it's time. It's working with it. It's getting used to it. I gotta tell you, like, you're all doing way better models than I did when I first started Zbrush. I was teaching myself. I was trying to figure it out from website tutorials and stuff like that, but like literally all of you are doing better models pretty much than I was doing when I first started out. It just takes time with stuff. So let's keep this going, and I like kind of brushing sometimes along it using something like a Damien, not the Damien Standard clay buildup, in the direction that the hair would kind of run. The reason I like doing this, especially on cartoonier things, is that I can come in after I've done a lot of these, and I can just soften it back, and we can see, again, really subtle implication of some shapes. It helps me break some stuff up more. Okay, I'm going to take a look a little bit at this jaw. I'll pull that out a little bit more. Another tool you can use is N. It'll actually let you switch subtools as well. I want a teeth to have like a nice curved form to it. So now that I've got some more geometry to this, I have enough space for some small stuff like nostrils. And I can use just a hint of building up like a full nostril. For carving and stuff like this too, I like inflate a lot. And I want to make sure when I'm doing this I don't have Dynamesh on, because if I throw Dynamesh on and I use it, it's going to ruin this like great topology that I've got to help me control my shapes. Anytime I feel like I'm losing the shape of it, I can always come back and with a low resolution just pull things out. And then go up a couple levels and just help correct it as it's going. You see I kind of carve it out at a level that's like pretty low. So instead of carving it here, which looks like right, I go down lower and I carve it here, and then when I go up a higher level, it's in there. It's just subtle. Let's go down a level, and I'm gonna like help myself, like kind of do a little cut back here, maybe a little pinch running along this, and then you can see these just Canadian standard, pretty large, and smooth back out. Of course, I'm missing his distinctive eye mask, which is a big part of his thing. Oh, thanks. You know, like I said, if you got any questions about how it works, the thing I love about ZBrush is it like always to me has felt like when you kind of clicks with you, it's like there's so much freedom of how you get to choose to approach your project. And I find a lot of modeling tools don't really work that way. A lot of restrictions in most modeling tools and how you can approach them, how they want to work. And ZBrush is usually pretty chill with you doing things however you feel like doing them and tackling them in whatever order you feel comfortable. Okay. And again, the nice thing is like any of these curves, if I don't like something, just go down to the lowest level and make adjustments to like that. And then I can pop back in. Let's make this mask. A couple ways to make it. Could just start carving out a normal thing. I could, in this case though, I'm going to show you how we can use that extract tool. This is perfect for this kind of thing. I'm going to go ahead and mask. And I'm literally going to mask out the area that his little domino mask would be in. Like so. Give it a little bit of space for the eyes. I Control Alt and click to like sharpen that mask. And now I'm going to come up into my called extract in here. And extract will just push out a new piece of geometry from whatever I see. Give some space for the eyes to come out of it though. I'm going to carve out a little eye space for this. And these eye holes are what I'm probably going to use to really define the shape of the eyeballs in the skull. So it's going to be a really important feature for me to have. Push that up nice and right. Now I can extract it, and it's going to give me this shape, which isn't perfect, but it's a good start. I'm going to accept that, break it down, and now I'm going to Dynamesh it. So I can soften it. Inside and out. Nice thing about cartoon is you can kind of keep things a little simple, lumpy, however you want to define it like that. They work pretty great. And now it's just a matter of moving and adjusting the mask. It kind of works like his eyebrows, the way the mask is set up. I can still now adjust eyeballs, make them bigger, push forward a little bit more. And now the mask is going to be what I use to define the shape of his eyeballs. If I want him looking concerned or like he's like looking really aggressive, I'm going to use this intersecting with his eyeballs to do that. But he has kind of a slanted, you can see, kind of like an oval shape running with it. So. Inflate and build up a little bit here. We can see I can like build up now to help control that. Of course, it's a Dynamesh shape, which means pretty messy. I'll maybe show you a different way of making this too. Okay, let's do a little bit of work with the chest and everything here. I want to get this idea of like his shoulders, which are to me such a defining characteristic. And I'm going to have that F in there, because if you don't have it, you don't have Freakazoid. He's kind of a slope, kind of running up the back here. I want to make sure like everything's on that kind of slope like this, and then define up like that. That's good. And sometimes if I want to get it like really feeling like a sculpted thing, I can trim the back of it and the bottom, which is like how they do busts. Or often have like a trimmed base or back, something like that. And I can just sort of build up a little bit on the shoulders. But like again, the character doesn't have a lot of defining features there, so I don't want that either. Let's see. Take the hair, I'm going to up the resolution to 256. And now to do, I'm going to use that extract trick to do the little pieces coming off. So I want these little hair chunks come off, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use extract to do that. So I'm going to draw out a shape, and in this case, I'm going to use masked lasso because it's going to let me draw something a little bit more trapezoidal. So I can draw like a little shape like that. Now it draws it on both sides, which I don't actually want. So I'm just gonna hold Alt when I mask to get rid of that. I just want this one piece. I guess I could make both on each side. I mean, it might not be a bad idea. But now I can do an extract, an accept, and now I have a separate piece of geometry. I can Dynamesh. Pull out from the head. Hey Dewey, Jay, good to see both of you. And yes, Freakazoid is a super dude extraordinaire. So I like this one well enough, but I'm gonna make, let's do like that little lightning boy. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jay. Can't find a way that fits your style unless you practice. And so I really am a person that I learned a lot about drawing and sculpting by copying other people's work at first. Of course, always with attribution. Always important to make sure you give credit to people for their work. They're called studies, in fact. It's such a standard part of working in 3D modeling. We have like a special term for it. So it took me a couple times to get that lightning bolt exactly the way I wanted it. I am going to want one on both sides. So let's go ahead and extract that. Except doesn't really look as good on that side. So I might just have to go to modify topology, and I'm going to delete by symmetry. So it's going to get rid of that guy. So I'll just work on this one. Let's set it to 64. And then I'll use a little pinching. You know what? Good reminder. Good time to save. So this was my ZBrush version, and now I'm going to call this 4, and I'll say this is Sculpt. Ooh, caps on. Sculpt Pass 1. Just so, like, as you can see, I've been working on this for maybe an hour, and I already have 4 different saves going. That's pretty typical. This is one way of building this lightning bolt out. I'm going to show you a different way that also might work well for the mask. So I'm going to solo this, wrong solo. Take this guy, and instead I'm going to sculpt, I'm going to do it with the Topology brush, which is going to help us make lower resolution stuff that we can control a little bit better. So B, T, and O. Topology brush is weird. I want to make sure, if I do it large, with like my brush large, it makes these little dots smaller. If I go smaller, I get a little bit more control. What this basically does is it'll let me draw out, and anywhere I make squares, if I now tap on it, it's going to create geometry for me. And anywhere I draw with Alt, it's going to cut stuff away. So it's great for me if I want to draw out something like this lightning bolt shape. So I'm going to say it then kind of comes that way. And then I want it to go like so. Back like that. I'm going to draw out more of its silhouette first. Clearly, I didn't spend enough time practicing drawing lightning bolts as a kid. Because mine not look good. You can always get rid of it too if I just need a little bit more. That's good. Okay, and then I can Alt kind of drag over these little ends, delete the little nubbins on everything. Oh, that's handy. I can just Alt drag away the whole thing. Now I can kind of create some quads out of everything. Definitely don't have quite enough shapes here. Ugh, I don't like how this is going. So I'm gonna just scratch that. I'm sure there's a faster way of deleting all these, but not doing exactly the way I want it to do it. Yeah, save, save, save. Everybody save. How do I want to do this? The problem with my hair right now is I probably don't have enough on my resolution. I want to do these lightning bolts as geometry. Ideally, I'd zero mesh them, but I don't want to do that with you guys. I don't know if y'all ready. Ooh, I'll show you a different way. So I'm going to make all my hair stuff, all my pieces separately. And I'm going to do that by duplicating the hair first. And then I'm going to solo that guy out. So I have two versions of my hair. 1 and 2. 2 is going to be the basis for all my little hair pieces that I'm making. So let's go ahead and use my mask pen. And I want my little lightning bolt to go here, then back, and then up. Now I'm kind of just drawing it on. Really as if, in a lot of ways, I was painting. And then I'm going to use Control and Alt. Help me kind of carve away the edges. So I kind of go over, and then I go back to get like a sharp edge on something like that. Okay, and then I'm going to draw out a couple shapes to be these little hair bits coming off. It's kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog-like spikes. Brush a little bit bigger. And then carve it out. Do you see, like, I like doing these live streams because you can see even me, and I've been using this program a really long time. I go in and I change the way I do things a lot. I'll do a lot of trial and error. And truthfully, although this class I'm doing only in ZBrush, I use so many programs. So now I have all these, and what I'm going to do now is Control W because that polygrouped them, and I can do Control Shift, click on this, double clicking again, it hides everything. And now I can do a little geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, so those are no longer there. And now I can run my Z-remesher. Before I do this though, I'm gonna sharpen things up a little bit. So this does it okay, but we can see it tries to keep all these jaggedy edges. I can improve that by doing my polish by features or group. Let's set that big circle because it's gonna smooth that out even more for us. Okay, something like that. And now I can run a Z-remesher. They're pretty simple, so it should go pretty quick. And let's see what happens if I go half a couple times. And maybe it was too far. So let's go to there. So this lightning bolt, I'm definitely going to need to shape a little bit to get it exactly the way I want it, but it's not so bad. But now what I'm going to do to build out these parts is I'm going to go B, Z, M, and by default, if I hit space, QMesh is going to let me lift up these surfaces to make them three-dimensional, but I'm going to do it to polygroup all. That's everything. You can see that's going to lift it all up like so. Give it a nice thickness. I'm going to struggle on a part or two, but that's okay. I can work with that. Not sure what's going on in a couple of these spots. It doesn't like anywhere there's triangles. So we can see it got a triangle, but it don't like a triangle. I can simplify this though. I'm just going to go delete and single poly, QMesh, goes back up. Ooh, you still ain't happy, are you? Go weld points. Did I get it? Yeah, he's still in there. Looks gross too. Alright, let's delete a couple polys. See it from some different sides. I'm gonna go weld points, and I'm gonna close holes. Between the two of those, yeah, that's moving a little bit more predictably now. Now I got this, and I can just subdivide it by itself. And it gives me kind of the shapes I want. I can always go down to the lower version and adjust stuff. I'm not getting into a lot of stuff with like creasing and everything like that. Just trying to show you that, if anything, the power of Z-remesher and the benefits of having a lower subdivision version to work with. Definitely when we get into the hard surface stuff, I'm going to show you a lot more cool stuff that you can do with Z-remesher. Now if I turn off solo, I get rid of this extracted piece because I didn't really like how it turned out anyway. Delete that, okay. And now I have all these pieces. I can just kind of push them into the head and pull them out. Another thing I do is move topological, make sure I don't move any of the other pieces by accident. Get this guy, I don't want him anymore, let's delete him. I'm going to take this whole thing when I feel like it's generally shaped the way I want it. Let's go ahead and I'm going to delete higher because I don't want any higher resolution stuff right now. And now I can do turn off diamond mesh. Don't want to turn it on by accident. I can do a mirror and weld. Definitely these parts aren't exactly where they need to be, but that's okay. That's what all these are for. Just pushing them into place. A little randomness here or there never hurt anybody. There's definitely lots of ways to do this. You might look at this and say, hey, Andrew, but I saw a video and someone did this way quicker by, which mask last though. Did this way quicker by creating an insert mesh tool to make all their hair. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great way of doing this, actually. There's so many ways of doing everything in this program. And there's definitely better and worse ways to achieve very specific stuff, but I've always felt that the best tool is always the one you're going to use. The best technique is always the one you're comfortable with. It's when you're creating pieces for like a class, what I always recommend is stick with something you know is going to work as like an assignment. When you're just working on your own for fun, it's a great time to just experiment with stuff. Try out new ways of working, new tools. I do that all the time. And it gives me a lot of half-finished projects on my hard drive, but also means sometimes when I'm working on something, I'm like, oh, I know how to do this really quick. So let's put this in, like so. Make it feel tangential. I don't like how thin these all turned out, so I'm just gonna use my inflate, give a little thickness. Nothing to it. Brush across. Yeah, oh man, Andrew, I love using the Bezier curve stuff when I'm working for like hair especially. Inside of Blender. It's one of my favorite ways of doing hair. Ideally, that's what I would, I'm showing you guys how to do stuff in Zbrush, but man, no, that's how I would do it on my own projects. So I kind of want to make sure this is tangential, so I'm seeing that some of these hair pieces aren't exactly feeling that way, so just make sure we give it as much help as we can give it. It's pretty close to the head, it looks like. And just, yeah, do more Blender. Blender is really fun. And one of the things I love about Blender is there's such a community around it, like so many people using it for so many really cool projects. And people are pretty open about using their workflows. This curve in the right direction. Like looping off that way. I try to avoid this kind of thing in ZBrush as much as I can, but sometimes you just gotta nudge things. Like that hip-hop dancer character I've been working on for a couple days. I had to just, for the jacket, like, there was a lot of nudging. Took a little time. Maybe took, 15, 20 minutes worth of just nudging stuff around. Not so bad. still like not too crazy about the profile changes. One of the trickiest parts about what I'm doing right now, wanting to make sure that I read from every angle like the character freakazoid. And so like hitting the right tangents is maybe the really tricky part. Like trying to get it so when it's straight on, it reads as flat to the skull, but over here, you know, kind of can flip up a little bit. So from the side, I get the idea of lots of these kind of like flyaway hairs, or what we call them. The even one curling back a little bit. Although, the character really kind of keeps all the tangents of the hair going the same direction. I should probably do it that way for this piece. Nice, dude. You should stream sometime. I'd watch your stream. Definitely the semester with so many people going to be working remotely and stuff. Probably try to do more streaming during the semester. I don't usually get the same chance to when everything goes so remote, but you know, gonna have to. Yeah, dude. Do it. Okay. I want to wrap things up with this character really quick because I just want to do the whole thing start to finish. I'm going to show y'all some poly paint. Because I got all the features and the pieces. Now I have to show you how we can actually, you know, poly paint the sucker. Still feel like eyeball-wise, let's really get his lids lifted up like so. Means I'm going to need more space for the eyes on the face. So I'm going to lower my resolution, really give myself a lot of space for these eyeballs to fit in. Great. Select my eyeballs, make sure I'm in local symmetry. Those up. Okay, so take this, go up to my highest subdivision level. Like it. Now let's talk about poly painting. So this object right here, I can start filling in, blocking in my colors first. You notice whenever I set here is whatever color I'm going to have. So whenever I go to poly painting, I change from basic material. By the way, basic material 2 is great for picking out colors. But I'm going to go to my skin shade 4, which is what most people use for poly painting. It's great, just basic kind of color. Nice, flat, and usually white. You'll keep everything in white as long as you selected it. Everything else will be gray. But again, I keep things mostly in separate pieces, although I might combine these little hair bits here. So before I do that, let's separate some of this out. Take all this. Let's go to auto group. Poly groups. Auto groups. And I'm doing this because I can control shift and hide these two, and then I can do split hidden. So that these are their own group. These guys, and I'm going to control D a couple times to build those up. And now I can combine them with my hair here. So I can go merge down. Okay. And Dynamesh them all together. Dynamesh is not set on. Definitely pretty high, but that's okay. Now that I've got the pieces on here, I can always come back in with like a clay buildup and help kind of brush stuff off. Of course, you see like it's really hard for me to smooth back so high. Let's see if I can get away with 128. Yeah, that's not so bad. Moving it back. Just kind of basically making this like it starts and slopes back. So combine this together because the hair, part of the hair, I could have kept it separate, but it's helping me define some of this stuff. So it actually works pretty well for this. And I actually think for what I'm doing now, basic material 2 is really helpful because it helps me show hair is a shiny thing. And so it helps me show how it's sheening across. So I can rotate and see this kind of looks like a little divot. I don't want that. So I'm just going to brush across and smooth down. But yeah, you show me 3 people who use Zbrush, and I'll show you 3 different people who use it completely different ways. I'm going to take this, and I'm not really going to get into the hard surface stuff, so let's not worry about that right now. But I am going to do my best to just maybe do a little bit of pushing and pulling and pinching. Get the lightning bolt shape exactly how I want it. Okay. See a couple more times. I can use pinch to help me just run some lines, tighten some corners up, and whatnot. All right, now let's start filling in the colors. So I'm going to go to Skin Shade 4, and let's start with his blue because we know this is what everything's at. Now, of course, if I move this and I change the color to this blue, just kind of picking it out as best I can. There are ways of getting the colors to pick to that, but yeah, I'm fine. I'm just going to eyeball it. When I get a blue I like, I can do Fill Object. Not normally down here. In fact, he's customized to move it because it's under Color, Fill Object. So I just Control Alt and drag it down to there because it's a lot easier to work with in my mind because I use it so frequently. So Fill Object means now if I'm on this object here and I change the color, everything else is going to change the color I'm at as long as it hasn't filled something. So the teeth are going to be white, Fill Object. Let's click the lower teeth, Fill Object. Let's go to the eyeballs, Fill Object. Let's go to the lightning bolt, Fill Object. Hair, let's do color, Fill Object because we know it's black, and then let's get that red. Kind of a muted. And then I can take this character, let's solo it. I know the inside of his mouth should also be a pretty deep dark red. So let's start actually poly painting. I'm going to go to my standard brush and I'm going to change the settings. I'm going to turn off Z-Add. So right now the brush does nothing. And I'm going to turn on RGB, which means it starts painting out just the color. mRGB will let me paint materials as well. Like if you want to make some parts metal, some parts not. I don't. So I'm going to paint the inside then of the mouth. And I wonder if my groups aren't still there. That's too bad. So I can use this to sort of just paint in the inside of the mouth, like so. Just like painting right on top of the character. I could also use masking filling. It's definitely painted the outside too. I'll have to fix that. The problem of it's too close, so I'm going to have to show you a trick or two for this. So we see I did that. I can sample by just clicking, dragging onto this color, and painting that back in. But you see it's so close, it's painting the inside and the outside. So I go to brush, and I'm going to go on to my masking. It's called auto masking, and I'm going to do a back face mask. This means I'll paint here, and it won't paint things on the inside. So it lets me just kind of paint this back. I often find that's really helpful if you ever feel like you're affecting both sides of the mesh without being able to control it. Just turn on back face masking, and it'll fix that for you. So now I'm going to turn the teeth back on so I can see where I do and don't want that. I want a little bit of that through here, maybe. Get a little brushed across. You know, having that like little line of red to me is pretty important. And in fact, I'm going to pick it out again, just really slowly brush it in here, just to make sure. And sometimes too, I give myself a little line of it, just running it because it helps me shadow things a little bit. It's going to help the teeth stand out a little bit more. Get that smile shape. And I'm going to go too far like here with it so that I can go select my skin and do the opposite. And brush it back. Great / gruesome and terrifying. Same along the bottom, just tightening up the lines. Like I said, I do want just a little bit of the idea that this is right back there. So that's pretty good for what I want to do with it. Still can always sculpt and move things and make adjustments to how it's looking in the mouth. Okay, let's do a little bit with the eyes. The eyes are pretty small. I feel like the sockets, like I made them a little too big. He's kind of got these little beady eyes. So I'm going to take what I have, try to inflate this back. Or could do, just to make it smaller because I'm feeling lazy, is I'm just going to knock out the backs and make them really tiny. See, here's the front, here's the back. This is what I'm making for his eyes. I'm just going to take these suckers and 180 them. Great. So his eyes kind of, there's like almost a little bit of down rotation. I think the mask too really finds some of the shape. Oh, I didn't color this black. Fill object. Now I'm going to check clip the eyes. Go back to my standard brush, which should still be set up to paint. And now I'm going to paint out kind of just like here. Now we can see here, it's not painting as smooth as everything else. It's because the resolution is so low. So the higher the resolution, it's actually painting vertices. The more precise it's going to get. And in fact, one way I can do this is if I solo it and I look at it, I know it's going to run along here. And do a mask curve, and this is one of the reasons I like working with this. Let's go down. You can see, let's go up a level. I can draw this mask curve, and it's going to mask it straight on. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Good. And it didn't really work the way I wanted it to. I'll just do it by hand. I like that idea. Is like he kind of has like white hollows of his eyes. And then I'll V to switch color. Just tighten up some of this. I can change the way my brush works if I want it to be nice and sharp by using the focal shift. So the softer I make this, like the softer this kind of edge will come in, versus I say the focal shift the other way, it's going to make a much harder edge. So 0 is kind of the default, and it's somewhere in between the two. Of course, the size of the brush matters because fall off is relative to brush size. Looking really manic, but I guess that's kind of a part of the point of the character, right? Mask is still Dynamesh, though. It's not as easy to control as some of my other features. But it's not bad. And lastly, I feel like definitely the cartoon character, but I don't like, this is what I love about Zbrush. I don't like, one very crucial thing is the head and face and all the eyes and everything feels too flat, and it doesn't rotate around the face enough. So I can actually go way down in resolution, because I realized when I was rotating from an angle, like, just felt, everything about the head felt flat. And now I can take my mask and kind of pull it back around the face a little bit more. I guess the head was doing it just fine. It just, my mask wasn't quite doing me any favors in that dimension. This would be a good time to save. I'm going to go save. Freakazoid. This is going to be 5 underscore polypaint. Save it. So if I decide I want the smile to come up higher, so I want his cheeks, his lips, all this stuff to come up higher, pretty easy to adjust. Thanks to what I'm working with here. And I just want to go up higher and make sure I make some edits. So I'm kind of wrapping up here. I'm almost done. If there's any questions, it'd be a great time to throw them out. I'm just fighting with this mask. As you can see, it's the one thing I didn't like ZRemesher and make a lower resolution version of. So it's a lot harder to control. But that's why we do it, you guys. Party people. That's what it's all about. A better view of exactly what's happening with the shape. Alright, well, I'm just going to use a little clay buildup. Just help me smooth, shape it, do all that stuff. Alright, let's do the little symbol here. And I can do that with polypaint. I can do this as a projection thing. I guess I could try to just project it in. something like this can be kind of difficult. We could use things like alphas for it, which would actually probably be the easiest way. But I want to show you really quick right now. If I do try to do the symbol, which has this black background, I'm going to do pure black because that's pretty strong. And if I'm using my standard, we can see I don't have great resolution. It looks really fuzzy because this never got Z-remeshed. So wouldn't be a bad idea to do that right now. I'm going to take this object, and I'm not even going to bother doing anything too crazy. Turn off Dynamesh, Z-remesher, and I'm just going to do it with whatever the default setting is. It's a simple shape. And then I'm going to just set it to half and hit it a couple times. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now I can divide it a bunch. So I'm up to however many active points. Get that red color back out of this pastel fill object. So now if I want to go for this dim kind of color, I get a lot more precision, and I can go even higher and get even sharper results. Let's try drawing out this symbol. I want to see if I can find an oval in here. So I have the standard, but I can also draw with alphas. So if I turn this alpha on, it doesn't do a lot with circle, but if I do something like this arrow, you see I'm actually kind of drawing with this arrow shape. And if I change the stroke, something like drag, it'll actually let me drag in this shape. Let's change this focal shift all the way down. We can see it'll let me kind of drag in a little bit. Which is pretty nice. Because if I take something like so, and I come to this alpha, I think, go to my alpha menu here. Spot and adjust. So many ways to make adjustments to things. Let me see. Brush, alpha, and texture. No, that's not what I want. So I could make my alpha for this. Wouldn't be too bad. Oh, you know what? I'll show you lazy mouse. That's a cool thing. Alpha off. Go back to dots. I'm going to turn on lazy mouse. Open stroke. There's this thing called lazy mouse. Let's go to enable customize. Stroke. I'm going to drag lazy mouse in. And a setting next to it under stroke called lazy radius. Let's turn it on. And what this is going to create is a little tail behind whatever I'm doing. And let's set the focal shift a little smoother. So the lazy radius doesn't really do anything now, but if I set it up higher, we can see it's smoothing out our control. And if I set all the way up, it's like creating this crazy, like, it gives me a lot of opportunities to move, and it makes it much easier to control shapes like this. That's too high though. Let's set it to something like this. I can use that to kind of try to help me draw out my little oval here. Or what I can do, this is a good idea, genius, is I'm gonna hash out to get the basic shape I want. I'm just kind of roughing it right now. Yeah, something like this. And then I can turn on lazy mouse. Kind of like follow it. There, that works pretty well. Now I'm gonna get my guy, save it really quick. Poly paint. Do the same thing. Lazy mouse, I'm gonna keep it pretty small, and I'm gonna start by just kind of sketching it out. Turn X off. I'm getting those dots because I can stepping. It's not really letting me change that. Lazy mouse, because I know I want a straight line for this. that. F here. A really good way to do this would be to go into something like Photoshop and actually build out alphas for stuff. But lazy mouse, just, you know, not quite feeling bad at the moment. The F a little fatter. Line about here. This up. This up. Not precise, but well, ain't doing precise work necessarily right. That across, and then I can use lazy mouse to just like trim some stuff back. And kind of cut. There's the faintest black outline in his logo. I'm not sure how worth it is to do it. Of course, I say that now. I'm like, why not? It does add a lot, I think, to the profile of the shape. This is tricky. Because you see if I follow this exactly, I might have to be in this. I'm in a small enough space that it's going to be hard to. More of my hand I can use. So like when I'm really going to get a really precise thing, I go as big as possible, change my brush, and then I'm going to use as much of my hand as I can. It sort of works like that lazy mouse. There we go. Oh, I made that logo whole thing way too big. That's okay. So I can just change his body up. Let's lower the resolution. Mask out this whole logo so I don't accidentally move a bunch of stuff. Just trying to change up his shoulders and stuff so it feels like. All right, one last step before we call it a day here, and that's to get the best possible look. So up here is something called BPR. It stands for Best Possible Render, and it lets me get things like shadows and stuff. And I can even go into my light menu. Let's open up lights, and I'm going to drag this off to the side. And this lets me change my lighting scheme with my BPR. So if I want, I could do a full 3-point lighting scheme. I got a light here. Let's turn that light on. Let's set its intensity down a little lower. So I could set this one, make this light here. Let's give it a little, there's a little bit of blue, not too much. Okay, this one, I always love to do just a little bit of orange. Again, keeping it pretty subtle on this light. So go real high with it. Obviously too wild. this one. This is 0.85, 0.3. So I don't get like my shadows so dark. We can see it helps like fill in those shadows a little bit. Up that intensity a little bit more. I think I'm looking at the wrong ones. And let's make a nice rim light. I'm gonna stick up at the top. Gonna help pick out some of the edges here. I'm not really getting this on the character. Let me give it a little diagnostic. Oh, I have it turned off. No wonder it's not doing anything. Just playing with my intensity until this light comes in for it. It's just supposed to be like a little over the shoulder. Forgot there's a way of flipping it behind the character. Don't remember what it was though. Okay, so then you get something like this. You get a light that you like, and come up to documents, and we do an export image. Throw it in desktop. Freakazoid. Ooh, one thing I want to do. Export, because I don't want to do PSD. PNG. So that wasn't too bad. It took me about 2 hours just running through it, just playing with some stuff. I have a file though that I can continue to edit. And now, if I open up my folder that I put all this in, got this guy. The size of this is going to depend on your document size and where we render it from. So this character is kind of in the bounds of where we render it at. Let's do it like about here. Click BPR again to get that shadows in. And all these savings are the wrong kind of save for us. Export to screen grab doesn't do exactly what we want. This has a lot to do with the size of what we're doing. Let's go export PNG just to get something a little closer to it so that, you know, the character size a little bit better. I'm just going to use the crop in here. So you're ready to post, you're ready to put it in, and make a big deal about how great you are at cartooning. So, thanks for dropping in today. Did about 2 hours of work in this and created a project. Pretty fun. Was pretty decent. I could definitely do more with. Didn't need to do a whole body. This is what I mean by a bust. Just like a little bit of the upper body, some of the defining features. But we're trying to create the essence of the character. And so this is the kind of workflow I want you to use because as I hope you've shown, it's as flexible as possible. I'll catch everybody on Thursday where I'll be doing another stream. Maybe I'll do a different character. Maybe I'll load up another project that I'm continuing to work on. Maybe I'll finish showing you how to do fancier renders using the hip-hop dancer kind of character that I was working with. So I can make that something I can throw in my portfolio. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm closing out the stream, and I'll see you next time.